Are list comprehensions and functional functions faster than for loops? In terms of performance in Python, is a list comprehension, or functions like map, filter and reduce faster than a for loop? Why, technically, they run in a C speed, while the for loop runs in the Python virtual machine speed. Suppose that in a game that I'm developing I need to draw complex and huge maps using for loops. This question would be definitely relevant, for if a list comprehension, for example, is indeed faster, it would be a much better option in order to avoid lags, despite the visual complexity of the code.
The following are rough guidelines and educated guesses based on experience. You should time-eat or profile your concrete use case to get hard numbers, and those numbers may occasionally disagree with the below. A list comprehension is usually a tiny bit faster than the precisely equivalent for loop, that actually builds a list, most likely because it doesn't have to look up the list and its append method on every iteration. However, a list comprehension still does a bytecode level loop. Using a list comprehension in place of a loop that doesn't build a list, nonsensically accumulating a list of meaningless values and then throwing the list away, is often slower because of the overhead of creating and extending the list. List comprehensions aren't magic that is inherently faster than a good old loop. As for functional list processing functions, while these are written in C and probably outperform equivalent functions written in Python, they are not necessarily the fastest option. Some speedup is expected if the function is written in C too. But most cases using a lambda, or other Python function, the overhead of repeatedly setting up Python stack frames etc. eats up any savings. Simply doing the same work inline, without function calls, for example a list comprehension instead of map or filter, is often slightly faster. Suppose that in a game that I'm developing I need to draw complex and huge maps using for loops. This question would be definitely relevant, for if a list comprehension, for example, is indeed faster, it would be a much better option in order to avoid lags, despite the visual complexity of the code. Chances are, if code like this isn't already fast enough when written in good non-optimized Python, no amount of Python-level micro-optimization is going to make it fast enough and you should start thinking about dropping to C. While extensive micro-optimizations can often speed up Python code considerably, there is a low, in absolute terms, limit to this. Moreover, even before you hit that ceiling, it becomes simply more cost-efficient, 15% speedup versus 300% speedup with the same effort, to bite the bullet and write some C.
If you check the info on python.org, you can see the summary. But you really should read the above article in details to understand the cause of the performance difference. I also strongly suggest you should time your code by using timeit. At the end of the day, there can be a situation where, for example, you may need to break out a for loop when a condition is met. It could potentially be faster than finding out the result by calling map.
You asked specifically about map, filter and reduce, but I assume you want to know about functional programming in general. Having tested this myself on the problem of computing distances between all points within a set of points, functional programming, using the star-map function from the built-in tools module, turned out to be slightly slower than for loops, taking 1.25 times as long in fact. Here is the sample code I used. Is the functional version faster than the procedural version?
I modified Elise's code and used profile to show why list comprehension is faster. Here's the results. MHO? Reduce and map are in general pretty slow. Not only that, using sum on the iterators that map returned is slow, compared to summing a list. For underscore loop uses append, which is of course slow to some extent. List comprehension not only spent the least time building the list, it also makes them much quicker, in contrast to map.
If you want more, please send it over to me.